48-hour art check, round 82. All right, here we are.
Yes, we are here.
We are. After a couple days where we were working but too busy to do the art check, which is work comes first. So.
Agreed. Yeah. It was just one of those times where I think you were busy, then I was busy, then we made it work. But we still made it work on a Sunday, so that's awesome.
Yeah, that's true. And I mean, it's just, that time of year, Christmas parties and stuff, so
oh yeah.
We had our annual ugly sweater party, which is pretty awesome.
Nice. I hope there were some hideous ones.
There were some great ones with lights that lit up and homemade ones. And every year I take a bunch of different, not matching colors of felt, and I just sew a poorly made patch with the word ugly on it. And then I just stitch that to any sweater, and then I pull it off at the end. So it's the ugly sweater conversion kit. I should probably sell it. But
nice.
So anyway. All right, should we jump in?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, I can't remember who started last, but do you want to go first here?
Sure. I'll take it. So I am inking this page, and so I've basically finished 5 panels of inks, so that leaves about 2 more panels to ink, and I'm pretty excited about it because of the holidays, having to get Christmas shopping done and things wrapped up with our catalog at work and stuff. I'm kind of pumped about the momentum that's still going and kind of tying into what we were talking about last art check. So yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I have also definitely been feeling that momentum. I think that was a good topic. Yeah. Even though the first 12 minutes of the video were silent. But yeah. For me, I figured out I'm going to make these that you see on the screen. Those are going to turn into tentacles and animate. And then the most exciting thing that I did is I finished the animatic. And for those of you that don't know, an animatic is kind of like a motion sketch. And so you can kind of see the moving sketch. So it's 10 seconds long. And then there's a kid in my neighborhood that's like a little prodigy on mixing audio and stuff. So I've actually hired him to kind of do some stuff. And we're actually doing a creative brief and everything for anyway. So I'm going to have a brand new soundtrack that goes with it and is beat with it and everything. But anyway, the animatic did exactly what it was supposed to do, which I'll talk about during the planning session. So
nice.
It was good.
It looks great. So
yeah.
I'm excited.
Thanks. What are your plans? Or no, what are your challenges?
So my biggest challenges this week were just trying to make sure that I'm retaining spending time with the family and stuff like that. So it's not a bad challenge. It's just kind of a normal challenge. And then, some financial challenges and stuff too. But, those are kind of part and parcel of being an artist.
Yeah. And
this time of year as well. So between those two, just kind of maintaining and showing up, I find that that's a huge thing because, even with working out and stuff, I've been consistent with that. And a lot of it just ties into showing up, which is it's a weird thing, but it's if you actually just force yourself to kind of sit down and do the work, it just starts becoming this flow. Occasionally you hit this point where it's just a beautiful flow, and I'm excited about that. Cause despite whatever challenges are coming, I don't know, it's a good place to be. So
yeah, that's awesome.
You?
For challenges for me, nothing really stands out. Just super busy holiday stuff. Having to shovel the sidewalk and everything's icy, and I have to put cleats on when I walk to work now, and so just a bunch of tiny little things that just make everything more time consuming and cold.
Yeah.
And then just stuff around the house I have to fix. And anyway, it was I walked to work the other day and it was -6.
Wow.
And so like there's like a level of preparation that it takes to like go outside when it's like sub-zero temperatures, or you can hurt yourself. So anyway, just nothing major, just living in a northern climate.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. It's kind of foreign to hear. The only struggles we have this time of year is like there was, some massive rain the last few days,
Right.
and people in California, whenever it rains, like it's like they lose their minds, and so they start like speeding, and you see like overturned like semi trucks and
Right.
stuff, and it's like there's always some massive nutty accident because people just like I said, when it starts raining, they either like slam on the gas or slam on the brakes.
Yeah.
And it's one or the other, and most of them don't know how to just kind of steadily go maybe like 10 miles under what you'd usually go, and you'll be okay.
Okay, as someone who was raised in California and has lived for the last 10 or plus years in a snowy area, let me just tell you that when there is any type of precipitation, just do everything slower. That's it.
Yeah.
If you don't get anything else from this episode, this will be super helpful, since I live in a college town where there's people from all over the world in all 50 states that have no idea what to do, and they all drive differently. And the first day of snow is literally everyone is just taking their life in their hands going outside because it's just chaos. Because there's like 13,000 college students that live within a quarter mile of this one place where everyone is trying to go. Just slow down sooner and slower. Speed up slower and take your time. When you see a stop sign, don't wait until the last second. If you're on a hill, don't floor it. Like it's pretty basic.
If you're heading up a hill and it's snowing, just don't stop a bunch. You'll stall.
Just keep going. Just keep going.
Yeah.
You'll get there.
Slow and steady. Yeah. Great advice. That was our topic for the day.
That was it. That's our topic. So how about your plans?
So my plans are to finish, I think I can finish this page. So I'm hoping to have this page finished. Doesn't mean it'll be scanned, but at least it'll be finished inking. So
cool.
Which is one more page down, which will be good.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to it.
That's awesome. That'll be great.
What about you?
My plans are I'm going to take all of these assets and start making them. And one of the biggest things about doing an animatic is you think you know how something is going to work, but as soon as you make it move, you realize the shortcomings of it. And this robot arm was designed completely incorrectly because I have two very long pieces near the TV, and they have to be short for it to animate the way that I want it to. So I have to kind of redesign that and make it. But now I just start the process of just like drawing everything and getting it all designed. So I've got my asset list from my animatic, and I've got the changes that I need to make. And so now I start building my assets. So I'm like the second to last stage before I finish it off.
I love it.
Yeah. Okay.
That's
so
cool. It's looking good, and I think it's going to be, I think it's going to work out pretty nice. But it is interesting once you see it in movement. Like it probably helps you assess a lot, like what not to do, what not to draw, what to draw, all of that stuff. Yeah,
and I mean, really, like I'm pretty good at spatial reasoning, and and even I, didn't anticipate like how the problems would arise until I started to make it move. And so, like, I really think an animatic is essential to animation. Nice. And so, anyway, and I'll be doing a video on that either tonight or tomorrow. So
cool.
Yeah,
excited.
Yeah, it'll be good. Okay, should we jump into the topic?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, I'll do a quick intro here then, and if you are watching in the chats, make sure to like and share and all that jazz. Okay, so 48-hour art check best of podcast. We go live usually Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 9 p.m. California time, and you can join us live there in the chats. We take the best parts of those conversations and rip them and put them in this podcast. And today's topic, we are talking about waiting instead of doing. So Josh, why don't you kick us off?
All right. So I'm going to start by quoting a little children's book and hopefully read it quickly and pronounce it correctly, but this is a bit from Oh, the Places You'll Go by Dr. Seuss. And so if you guys are unfamiliar, the main character is kind of going off on this journey. And at this point, he's gotten so confused. Okay, so I'm going to basically start from there. So you can get so confused that you'll start in a race down long wiggled roads at a breaknecking pace and grind on for miles across weirdish wild space, headed, I fear, towards a most useless place, the waiting place, for people just waiting for a train to go, or a bus to come, or a plane to go, or the mail to come, or the rain to go, or the phone to ring, or the snow to snow, or the waiting around for a yes or no, or waiting for their hair to grow. Everyone is just waiting. Waiting for the fish to bite, or waiting for the wind to fly a kite, or waiting around for a Friday night, or waiting perhaps for their Uncle Jake, or a pot to boil, or a better break, or a string of pearls, or a pair of pants, or a wig of curls, or another chance. Everyone is waiting. No, that's not for you. Somehow you'll escape all that waiting and staying. You'll find the bright places where boom bands are playing. And so it continues from there. And if you guys want, you should buy that book, especially for your kids. Good stuff, Dr. Seuss. But I think that'll hit us off. Yeah. I think the message of that is just kind of this experience I think we've all had where I'll just kind of start it off by saying my experience, and then I want to kind of hear your thoughts on it and stuff too. But I remember for years, I went to art school. I picked the school that I picked because there were some cartoonists I admired who went there. And I was like, when I get my illustration degree, then I'll be ready to make comics.
Right.
And before that, I'd do a page or two of comics, but I'd be like, well, I'm not ready yet. I need to learn these different skills and acquire these different skills, and then I'll be ready. And I had a lot of that, most of my life. I did make stuff. I made zines and stuff in high school, but I'd be like, but I'm not going to make a real comic book because I'm just not there yet. I haven't picked up the skills.
Yeah. And
I remember it was excuse me, I don't know what's happening with my throat. So I had this moment my senior year in college, and it was I was in this bookmaking class, and everybody was making a kid's book, and I was like, okay, maybe this is the time I should make a comic book. But then I assessed my skills and stuff like that, and I was like, no, I'm still not ready. And then I remember this night, and it's really vivid because it's one of those moments before you, I think, level up. And we've all had points like that in our careers or lives. But it was for me, this really profound realization of realizing if I didn't do it now, tomorrow's not going to be any better. I'm not I don't know what I'm doing, but there's not going to be a point where I know what I'm doing or I have all the skills.
Right.
And so I just decided, rather than kind of get older and be the guy who's I want to be a cartoonist. I want to make comics. I really love comics, and define myself by this thing that I'd never done. It would be better to just give it a shot and do it for real and give it my best effort. And that's the comic that I ended up submitting for the Zarek grant and getting the Zarek grant for. But it's this huge thing of I remember when I finished it too, just feeling oh, that's how it's done. Nobody knows. Nobody knows what they're doing.
Yeah, nobody has any idea what's going on.
Yeah, nobody knows how to make a book. Nobody knows how to, how to properly lay out a spread. You kind of learn, and then you really learn, and it's much like the animatic you were describing, where it's you kind of learn in theory it's going to work this way, and then when you put it in practice, it just all falls apart. And when you're picking up those pieces, that's when the real movement starts happening. But I'm thankful I had that moment, because I think there's a lot of people with a lot of things and projects and ideas they have in life that are stuck kind of in that waiting room from that Dr. Seuss book, and
Yeah.
and kind of waiting for like a superhero or like for an art director or for whatever it is to kind of come and give them the opportunity that they're kind of wanting. And my experience has been that I have never really been rewarded for waiting in that manner. So there's different times where maybe waiting's good, but rarely in that context have I ever been rewarded for waiting.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I was kind of curious, like what your experience is with that and stuff too. Sorry, I didn't mean to jump too heavily into the topic,
No, that's
but
fine. I've actually been reading, rereading a book that I read a little while ago. I've mentioned a couple times, The Icarus Deception. And it got me thinking on this. And like I normally do, when a thought strikes me as important, I will write about it. And so I actually wrote a thing that probably would have become a video script on my YouTube channel, but I'm going to read it here because I think it's applicable, and I'll tell you why. Before you try, you could be anything. You could do anything because it's all in a possible future. But once you try, the excuse of not having started yet is taken away, and you're left with the factual results. The fact of the matter is that potential possibilities are stupid and pointless. They never are anything. Effort, work, sacrifice, on the other hand, are the only things that produce tangible realities. The only way to actually become something is to do that thing until you are that thing. Without effort, there is only talk. Those that only talk never become. So, stop talking about what it is that you wish would happen or what you'd like to do, and just do it, because action is the answer. And so, the reason I feel so strongly about this is because for the longest time as a kid, I operated out of fear. I operated out of fear because as long as people thought of me a specific way and I didn't make anything that failed, then they could continue thinking of me that way, and I never proved them wrong. I never proved them right, but people thought of me as an artist and they thought of me as creative. And that actually terrified me to the point where the possibility of making something that looked bad or that was bad or that wasn't creative or whatever was so terrifying that I just let people believe something that wasn't actually true because I wasn't doing it. And I actually lived a significant portion of my life like that. And then what happened is that I started making a comic because I wanted to learn how to draw, and it was really bad. I was 32 at the time. And so, if I could get back, I drew for a little bit as a kid, and I kind of tapered off, as I got older, like most people do. I mean, almost everybody draws as a kid. Those 20 to 25 years of me not really doing anything, I'd give anything to have that back. Cause I mean, since 2012, when I started drawing, I feel like I've leveled up significantly. But it's not because I was waiting to get better. It's not because I was, it wasn't the right time or whatever. It was because I just was like, screw it. I've already wasted decades, and I'm just going to jump in. I'm just going to jump in both feet and make a beautiful mess of things. And my first comic was terrible. I did over 60 pages of it. And there are some really good shining moments. Like authentically, when I look back, I can say that there's some good things about it. But for the most part, it's not something I'm proud of. It's not something that I look back fondly on, except for it exists in reality. I made it a thing. And it's something that I achieved. It's pages that are underneath my belt. And it's gotten me to where I am today, to where I feel much more confident in a number of skills that I theoretically understood prior to doing that, because before I got started on that comic, I read everything that I could come up. I listened to all the podcasts. I listened to all the books. I read all the blogs. I followed all the people on Twitter, and I was just consuming all of this information, but not producing anything. And so I had a really good intellectual understanding of the process of how it all went, because I literally spent hundreds of hours in kind of research mode. and then I still made something bad, because that's what happens at the beginning when you're doing it, is the application of the thing, the facticity of the thing, the actual reality of the thing is much different and way harder than thinking about the thing. And so that's why I always kind of jokingly say that ideas are worthless, because everybody has ideas. There's very few people that execute their ideas, and there's even fewer people that take the skill and the sacrifice to execute their ideas well, because you're not going to do it in the first time. You have to become something to be able to do it, and the only way you can become something is by doing that thing until you become it.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think part of why when you start becoming kind of a doer instead of just a talker, you'll notice your level of criticism of other people's art drops a lot, because now whenever I see a book, whether I like the art, I think we both caught something.
Yeah, sorry.
No, it's cool. It's just funny. I think we both have a cough. But like no matter what I think of a finished work when I'm looking at it now, there's a part of me that's like, well, they finished it and they got it out there and they got it published and they got through the door somehow. And that always comes into mind, because that's not an easy battle, and it does require work, and it does require showing up. And so, to me, I think that, I personally was like a bit of a perfectionist, and I think most of it was driven by fear before really finishing my first comic. And I had nothing like that kind of anxiety or fear when it came to illustration, like single drawings, because that was something I was confident in. Like I could do it, and if I spent enough time at it, I knew I'd get better. But comics were so daunting, and they were something I loved so much and was super critical of, that it, like, dipping into it was just such a frightening prospect. And so, but I've never regretted doing it, because once you open that Pandora's box, it also gives you a broader appreciation of the artists who've come before, of like people who can do really brilliant things with word balloons. I mean, word balloons, I remember, was one of my biggest challenges.
Yeah.
Like certain things with spreads and layout, where it's like you start doing, and then it makes you realize like why certain things exist, why certain things don't work. And it really does kind of put you in the ring, and whether you get knocked out or not, like it at least it gets you in the ring. To me, there's nothing that irritates me more as a creator. But sometimes it can be exciting. Sometimes it can be irritating hearing someone who calls himself like a poet, and then they're not writing poetry.
Yeah.
Or they call themselves an author, and they're not writing books or journalism or whatever it is they feel like they're called to do.
Yeah.
They call themselves like a fantasy writer, and they've never written any fantasy. Like, they call themselves an artist. I met a lot of these people in art school. Most of them were in illustration majors, because they wouldn't cut it in the program with that kind of thing. But they dress like artists,
Yeah.
Like they'd have an art lifestyle. It was just their mystique. And it's like, no, art's not a mystique. It's an act.
Yeah.
And if it's an action, and if you're not doing that action, then you're not an artist,
Yeah.
And so like, I guess my point is like it can be scary, but not doing is the death of ideas.
Yeah.
And so like what Cory was saying about ideas being stupid, I agree, except when they're acted on.
Yeah, then they're awesome.
Like, yeah, exactly. Milton Glaser, the I Heart New York, that's a brilliant idea. There might have been 20 guys before who thought of that idea and never put it down.
Yeah.
He put it down, made a deal with the city. It's one of the most litigiously protected graphic designs on the planet, but it's deservedly so, because he was the guy who got to it. He's the guy he actually thought of it, put it down, designed it, marketed it, hustled it, got it out there, and that's how that happens,
Yeah. I think one of the important things to understand is that there's a hierarchy in most of our minds that I think is totally incorrect. And that hierarchy is that failing, or whatever you want to call that, making something bad, making something that proves that you're not who you have been professing to be, making something that isn't as good as you've been critical of or whatever, that is somehow worse than not doing something. And there's even a quote, better to keep your mouth shut and be thought a fool than open your mouth and prove everyone correct, or something like that. I actually think that the hierarchy should be this. It should be success is best, failure is really good, and then under that is unmet potential, which actually should be more shameful and worse than failure, because when I go out there and I make something and it's bad, I've made something. It took effort, it took work, it took sacrifice. I did that thing at the expense of other things that I could have been doing. Yeah. And so there was an opportunity cost to that. There is an expenditure of value in that thing. And just because it didn't work out doesn't mean that it's better than not having tried. And I think the quote that really meets this is, better to have loved and lost than never loved at all, is because having that experience and doing that thing, even if it doesn't work out in the end, is way better than never realizing anything. And I think this goes back to a couple different books that we talk about often. One is Die Empty. Todd Henry. I always get Todd Henry and Jed Henry confused, but Todd Henry, the Accidental Creative Podcast, he wrote a series of books. One is Herding Tigers, which is one that I want to read soon because it's about managing creative teams. But the one before that was called Die Empty, and he talks about this idea of the most expensive land in the world, and people are like, it's the penthouse in Tokyo, or it's whatever. And he says, no, the most expensive land is cemeteries, because that's where all the potential ideas that were never realized exist. That's where all the best novels and poems and books and movies and animations, and they died with their would-be creators who never did anything. The other thing that comes to mind is Stephen Pressfield's War of Art, where he talks about beings beyond time. There are things that are outside of time. He calls them angels, but he also says you can call them whatever you want. You call them muses, call them genius, call them inspiration, call them the universe, whatever you want. And those beings have these ideas, and they are just waiting for somebody who's willing to make the sacrifice to execute those ideas, because until those things exist in time, they have no value. And so he said, maybe Mozart was just the first one that listened, that was willing to go through the work to bring that from this outside of time realm into time. But it doesn't mean that it was the first one that the muses or the angels or the genius tried to whisper it to. And so this idea that something doesn't have value until it is realized in facticity, in reality, it's brought forth into this dimension of time, where things are tangible and exist. I really, really like that idea, because, like we said before, I think it's really important to understand that ideas are exceptionally valuable, but only when they're executed poorly or successfully. But otherwise, they are worthless, and they're worse than worthless because they have potential that is being unmet, that should be met, because you've been given that idea. And whatever you believe, on the scale of wholly religious to the scale of wholly atheistic, you have to believe that there is something that causes your mind to be different from your brain. And there's something that causes your mind to have these ideas. And whatever you believe that is, whether you believe it's a biological imperative, whether you believe it's some sort of shared thought with the rest of humanity, whether you believe it's angels, some sort of inspiration, some sort of whatever that is, past ancestors, you have to believe that there's some sort of ethereal outside of time thing that is trying to realize these ideas, and the only way that can happen is through us, and the only way that can happen is through us sacrificing things and doing it. And so that's why it drives me nuts when people say, because I just got this comment on my YouTube channel a few days ago. Somebody said, "Oh, I'm really excited about this. In a couple of years, when I start my project, when I'm ready, I'm totally going to, do X, Y, and Z." And I was like, why would you wait a couple of years? Just do it now. Just do it right now. What's stopping you? Nothing's stopping you. Just do it.
Yeah. And I think the way I'd put it is like, to me, I'd rather be broke and innovating and creating rather than be mediocre, comfortable, and wealthy. To me, mediocrity should be the last thing we're attempting in this whole experiment, of living. I think, does that mean we should all be trying to be like pro footballers? No. But we should be trying something. We should be trying to kind of follow whatever that is. That's the thing that we're supposed to be doing. And if you feel like you're put on this earth to like, to like smooth pavement when it sets, I mean, there's a career for that. And like that, if that's your passion, like chase it and do it. And then when you're doing it, I can't imagine you going home from that and feeling bad about that, because it's what you feel like you were put here to do. There's some people I've met who like love being servers at restaurants. Like they love it. They like to wait on tables, and they actually enjoy the whole interaction with people and stuff.
Yeah.
And like I've literally met old waitresses and waiters who like, that's like, they're living the dream. Like that's their dream. That's their thing. They like to be around people. They like to please people and give them, food and stuff like that. And that for them, that's kind of their thing. But I think for creatives, for people who like have that bug, which I think would be most people who listen to this thing, the bug isn't worth anything until you do something with it.
Yeah.
And I think that's the key thing is like, if you're a creative, you have something that you want to say. And if you're not saying it, it's wind, it's just, it's kind of a pointless endeavor. So I think we're in agreement on this. I'm sure maybe there's somebody out there who might disagree. If you guys disagree, let us know in the chats. If you agree with us, let us know in the chats. A good challenge for those of you listening, like, is there something that you've been waiting to work on for a reason? Is there a reason it's on pause? Yeah. And is the only acceptable reason in my head is if you're working on a project already.
Right. Yeah. If you've got one that you're already doing, because we've all got that, and I don't think there's any shame in that. The other thing that I want to bring up, and I think this is really important, is if you are currently making something and it's not good, you should be proud of that. Like, you should be proud of the fact that you're making something. I remember I played football in high school, and I remember my football coach saying, there's going to be 3,000 people in the stands and 50 people that suit up. And there's a reason that there's 50 people that suit up and 3,000 people in the stands, is because this is hard. It hurts. It's worth it, but it's hard and it hurts. And there are very few people that execute. And there are tons of people that watch. There are tons of people that watch from the stands. And so even if you're currently making something and you're like me and you're like, oh man, this could be so much better, remind yourself that you're making something and that others aren't. And not by way of making yourself feel better than them, but just the fact that you are rare amongst human beings, that you are doing something that is more than just being entertained, that is more than you're required to do, and that it'll get better. That you will get better, that your work will get better, the situation will improve, because this universe rewards effort. It rewards good work. And kind of like, if you haven't watched the last episode on momentum, go watch or listen to that episode, because I think Josh and I are both kind of in that right now. Like, I have had an incredible few days after several weeks of real struggle and really just fighting, resistance and like everything, and nothing outside of my own brain and heart were really like causing any of these problems. I didn't have any excuses. I didn't have any reasons why I was fighting, but it was just a slog through the mud. And then I hit this stride, and I have been firing on all cylinders for a few days. And I think that's because I was willing. It's not because anything has changed with me, but just because the world rewards effort. And I was willing to make those sacrifices consistently enough to where it eventually paid off. And now I'm on that downhill where I'm getting as much as I possibly can. And there's going to be another hill that I have to go up at some point in time. And that's when I need to remember that the world rewards this sacrifice and this effort that creatives do.
Awesome. And I'm going to let Cory end on the high, and I'm going to end on a low.
Okay.
which is a good conversation or thought to have as a creative. Don't dwell on it, but it's a good thought experiment. And so, you know, as a creative, you should be having deathbed conversations in your head occasionally. And what I would like to kind of propose out there is, if tomorrow you got hit by a bus, and you're put in critical condition in the hospital, you can't draw anymore. Are you going to be able to be in the hospital and know that you put every effort you could into making the thing you wanted to make, and that it's kind of out of your hands? Because I think I could rest easy with that, like for myself.
Yeah.
But I know that if, like this graphic novel, if I weren't doing the work every single day, and then that happened to me, I would be so pissed at myself for not taking advantage of the time when my hands were working, when everything was working, when my health was here, you know, when I could actually do it.
Yeah.
And I think that's a huge thing as a creative. If you feel like there's a story you have to tell, we're not on limitless time. And that's one of the things that, unfortunately, it took me a long time to realize. Like, I started in comics way later than I should have. I should have been doing completed comics when I was in junior high and just stapling them and going to comic conventions and selling them. That's what I should have been doing. And I don't regret, you know, the past, because that's useless. But my point is, you know, time is a limited quantity. And if you're not using it to do the thing you feel like you're supposed to be doing here, then like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
And that to me is like, that's something that keeps me going on it too. It's more on the negative, but it's still, I think, a really important thing. And could be a topic all on its own, I'm sure, but yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So those of you that are listening and watching to this, in the comments, we'd love to hear what is stopping you and what are you going to do about it. And and I understand that articulating that and typing that is a vulnerable situation. And so if you don't want to do that publicly, you know, don't do that publicly. That's fine. But if you do that publicly, I think it'll help. But if you don't want to do it in this chat, do it somewhere. Tell someone that you trust, or write it down in your journal or something. But really get that outside of your head, because once you realize that it's outside of your head, it becomes something other than you, and it's something that you can pick apart. Because inside of your head, it feels like part of you, and it's a problem, because it feels logical to believe those type of things, but it's actually not. It's actually not. And so if you feel like you're being held back because you're waiting to be better, you're waiting to do this, you're waiting for whatever, you know, you're in that waiting place and you're not acting, really analyze why. And you should do something about it today. Do something about it right now, because that's the only way that you're going to move past that.
So Matthew in the chats just said, I agree. My daughter, who loves drawing, asked me questions about making a comic. I showed her my first mini comic and told her that when I look back on it and see how far I've come since then. Oh, he didn't finish his thought. Oh no, I thought you had finished your thought.
That's okay. I'm sure he's typing there.
I'm imagining it's I'm imagining the rest of it is when he showed her, you know, how far he's come since then. You know, he was kind of proud of that progress, and I'd imagine that would be inspiring for somebody just starting out. Yeah. If I were to show, you know, like my first drawings to you guys, I think you would be encouraged, because like most of us don't start out brilliant or good, and you know, even currently I'm not where I'd like to be.
I'm
hoping more pages.
I found my 2012 sketchbook. I'm probably gonna do a video where I'm flipping through, showing it, because some of that stuff is rough, man. But I mean, that's part of the process, is being able to say, you know, and what Matthew's saying here, I can totally relate to, because it's like, you know, I made a thing, and I remember feeling this way about my mom, who's an artist. I remember telling her when I was like 5 or 6, I would draw something, and then I would look at what she drew, and I would be like, oh man, you're so much better than me. And it was like a real downer, like how much better she was than me. And she kept telling me, honey, I'm so much older than you are. I've been doing this for so much longer. You know, you just got started doing this, and that's totally okay. And I was like, no, it's not. I suck. I'm bad at this and whatever. And now I see my daughter saying and doing the same things that I was doing, you know, and she's just like, it doesn't take you any time at all to draw something that's so good. And I'm like, no, it took me years to draw this like this. Like, you have to understand that. And so there is that thing. But then also the other thing is when I talk to my kids and I'm like, hey, look at this, you know, I made this. And the reason that I was able to make it is because I've been doing this every day for a few years. They can see that there's work and that there's effort and that there's stuff. And then, you know, seeing that path, I think, is really helpful up close, because if you only see it from a distance, you think it's kind of magic. We're kind of getting off on a topic here, but
no. I think that ties in a little bit to something I experienced in teaching, which is some of my favorite students were usually the B students, because some of the kids who came in with like mass talent, you know, came into like classes with that, wouldn't put in as much effort as the kids who weren't naturally all that great coming in. And so what I'd end up seeing is like the kind of A student would kind of come in like this and just kind of maintain. Yeah, they plateaued. And meanwhile, the B student, like here, I'm trying to get this across, but anyhow, I'll do B. Yeah. So the B student would gradually sneak up and start leveling up and surpass the A student by the end of the semester. And the A student by the end of the semester would be like in shock. Yeah. Oh, I'm not the best kid in the class anymore. And that was like my favorite students because they put in the work and leveled up, and that tends to be how you get rewarded. So the thing that's weird about the whole talent fear that a lot of people have in the fake culture, we've talked about this before, but it's like there's a cultural kind of idea of like this genius that just hits you, and you're, you know, painting people like, you know, one of the French girls or whatever. Like it's like this art thing is just a feeling, and you're just naturally gifted. There is natural gifts, I think, but what's interesting about natural gifts versus hard work is natural gifts tend to plateau and stay the same, whereas and actually create a sense of like entitlement and I'm trying to think of the word, complacency, where you're just kind of, you're where you're at. But the neat thing about kind of hard work is you're not content, and you're constantly striving and struggling to get better. And that usually leads to some kind of crossing the natural talent. But that could be a whole other topic too. Oh, Matthew finished his story. Why don't you finish it off, Cory?
So he said, my daughter who loves drawing asked me questions about making a comic. I showed her my first mini comic and told her that when I look back on it and see how far I've come since then, I finished it, and that was a big step in making more and getting better. I showed her my first sketchbook and showed her how far she had, or how far she has already come. And so, and I think that's a really good point. So no matter where you are kind of on this journey, if you're doing it, you'll be able to look back and see progress, because doing it and action is the only way to change what you are, and so that you can become something better, rather than claiming to be something and never executing on that. I think that's a good comment to end on.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So if you want to check out stuff that we have done and it exists and we have brought it into time, then you can go to Joshua Kemble's thing and go to quarterlystories.com. You can check out my stuff at corykerr.com. If you're listening to this audio after the fact, we would love a 5-star review on whatever app you are listening to. And one thing that I heard, and I'm going to say this, I normally don't do the salesy thing, but I do want to do the salesy thing right now because I heard this on a podcast and I thought, hey, that's a really good idea. Sometime tomorrow, I want you to tell at least 2 other people about this, whether it be the YouTube channel or the podcast. Just 2 people that you think might enjoy listening to this. Just share it with them. And because if you do that, hopefully we're bringing value into people's lives. At the very least, we're giving you something to listen to while you make stuff. And so that can't be bad. And anyway, so yeah, there's that.
It's reasonable. 2 people.
Yeah, everybody knows 2 people. Okay, we'll catch you guys in a couple days. Have a good weekend.
Bye.